Hello, everybody. Welcome to a another Q&A with the dev team. This time is a little bit different because this time is going to be our first Thirsty Theme Thursday. Which, when I created the name, I didn't realize that name isn't actually universal, like Thirsty Thursdays. So people had a really good kick out of that, which was interesting. But yeah, this Q&A is going to be based around theme 1 and 2, which was art and law. I think a lot of the community has had many comments in regards to these themes. A lot of comments, very informative, very interesting. So we did receive a lot of questions in relation to this. We are hopefully going to try and answer a lot of those today and maybe clear up a couple of bits that people maybe need to know about. But first of all, let me introduce the team that we have here today. I don't know who wants to introduce themselves first. I mean, CCP Collins probably doesn't need an introduction, but of course he can go first if he wants.
Sure, why not? Yeah, I'm CCP Collins. I'm Scott. There you go. I'm going to just say it. That's my normal name. I'm not Colin. I'm Scott, and I'm the lead product manager doing product direction on EVE Vanguard at CCP London.
Amazing. CCP Wrinkles?
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Leo. Do the same. I'm lead concept artist on Project Vanguard and joined the team a couple of years ago, almost by now. And with CCP Joker, I'm in charge with him to kind of get the levels to look as cool as possible.
Cool. And CCP Demiurge?
I am CCP Demiurge, as he just said. Known to some as Uriel from prior times as an EVE player. And I am the narrative designer for Project Vanguard.
Amazing. And last but not least, Joker?
Hello, I'm Joker, and I'm going to remain a man of mystery. So, no, I'm not. I'll say it. My name's Neil. There you go.
And what do you do?
I'm the art director. That's a good. That's an important fact, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't just found you on the street, just to pull you
Yeah,
in.
off the street.
Amazing. But yeah, it's really great to have you guys with us today, especially talking on the topics that we have lined up. Now, in regards to the questions that we had submitted, we had a lot of law questions, and I think a lot of them were kind of based around the deathless and your choices, and I think there was a lot of maybe just not confusion, but maybe some unanswered questions that a lot of people are interested in, because the narrative was great. So maybe you guys, if you, Collins and Demiurge, if you want to maybe pick up some of those questions collectively, since a lot of them were sort of like overlapping, then that would be great.
Can jump in.
No, go on. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I can jump in first. I know Demiurge can speak to this as well. I think we saw a lot of questions from people about agency and as a Vanguard, who can they align with? A lot of people have built up their own narrative about who they want to be and what they want to be in the universe. So our view around it, whilst you have been created here by the Deathless, the view around Vanguard is that it should still be about the mercenary fantasy, right? And part of this is that there is agency for the players to choose who they align with, but with their actions, rather than just ticking a box in the front end or going through a very faction-led character flow. Alliance in Vanguard is very fluid, more fluid than I think it is in EVE Online and the character flow you go through there. But we want that alliance and what you represent to be kind of demonstrated through your actions and how you exist in that world and what you choose to do and how you choose to do it. How players can demonstrate that in-game right now is light, but that's one of the things that we'll be building up, even with the next release and onwards, is adding more things, more features, more narrative over time that allows players to express that more and speak with their actions about who they are and who they want to be as a Vanguard.
Amazing. And yeah, just to touch on that as well, I did see people actually, creating sort of backgrounds already for their their Vanguard characters, their war clone characters. And yeah, so it's good that you did touch on that. Sorry, Demiurge, I didn't mean to put in there.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, just to add it to the point that CCP Collins was sort of making. I mean, we have again several questions mentioning faction choice, groups besides the Deathless Circle as potential homes or places that the technology involved is available, that sort of thing. The way I'd really like to look at it is that the technology has to start somewhere, and that is starting with the Deathless. There are really no blockers narratively on this eventually being a thing that several other factions have some degree of potentially access or separate, I guess, ownership of, if we're able to do that. Saying it unclearly right here, sorry. More or less, there's a lot of factions that could end up building an understanding of the Vanguard in the future. And that's directly informed and supported by a number of existing story elements that these factions have involved with them in several cases. For instance, Mordor's Legion, or the Amar Empire, or a number of others. And just to say outright, it's very much our intention to expand the agency of the Vanguard. And I understand very well that the initial things here with the Deathless certainly restrict that in some ways, but it's not the intention to purely stick with you're with the Deathless. You're always with the Deathless.
Yeah, great. Collins, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that as well, or if that pretty much sums it up.
That's it, right? Like I said, it's that mercenary fantasy, and we want people to have agency. I think agency is really important. It's a huge part of EVE Online. You can be anything that you want in a sandbox like that. And whilst we're building at this narrative and the beginnings of the Vanguard, it will only keep expanding, and what people can do, what flags they choose to fly, and how they want to exist in that universe is certainly going to expand over time.
Yeah, just really just to say it in one quick little bit, the tech has to come from somewhere, both narratively and in regards to game development. So from there, it can grow.
Yeah, I guess it's like the equivalent of like planting a seed, and then you get all these branches that come off, and it can go off in any direction. At least that's how I'm picturing it, because obviously I'm not an EVE player myself, so I'm coming into this, and when I've seen all the like all the comms and stuff that's been going on around the sort of lore aspect, it's been a real eye opener for me to see how deep the stories can go. So it's really interesting.
Especially the actual stories that the players have sort of spun for themselves over the years. I mean, Dust 514 shut down a number of years ago, and you have people who've been sort of keeping that flame alive. So it's definitely our intention to, to continue paying respect to that.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen people making like their costumes and stuff already for like FanFest and stuff, and that's really interesting to see the kind of extent that people go to really commit to their in-game players. Cool. So what we can do then, if we go by the upvotes that we had, I'll just start listing the questions off, and then you guys can take it away. So the first question that I have down here is actually from Garm. And it's, how do the Triglavians, who have been at war with the Sleepers for eons, feel about the Deathless building an army of first-generation war clones merged with Sleeper consciousness? Where do the Drifters stand on this? Is war on the horizon?
And of course, that one would probably come to me here.
Yeah.
So the Triglavians specifically were at war with, they called their ancient enemy Azdaha, they called them, which was the tyrants of the Second Jove Empire. And the degree to which that is directly a thing that would include the Sleepers in the past is a question. But obviously, in the current day, you have the Drifters, which is a whole other can of worms. They're certainly, so this isn't, let's see, speaking less authoritatively as in like, oh, this is precisely what is happening. But the Triglavians and Drifters clearly would have an awareness of events that are going on and an idea of, yeah, there's a group here who've taken control of this old Jovian outpost. And there's certainly, well, I can't spoil things. And don't take that
No,
as
that's
an
fine.
indication that things are going to happen either right away. But these things matter. There is a deep history interwoven with all of this that we're hoping to explore and expand more. And that's something that crosses between the EVE and Vanguard team very much directly. So
Mhm.
these are not they're not paying attention, but I wouldn't.
That's fine. We can leave it
I
there.
think I'll end it there. Actually.
yeah. That's fine. We can leave it there. No, all good. The next question then, this is actually probably in relation to art. So considering the variety of ship skins in EVE Online and the capability of having hologram VFX, can the art team expand on the color palette at all when it comes to crash ships in maps in the future? I'd love to see some hologram glitchings and RGB splits / chromatic errors in the emitters. And this question comes from MacLeod. So Leonardo or Neil, do you want to? Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah, do you want to take it away?
I can answer this one. The answer is obviously yes. We're looking at all of these sorts of things to add into the mix. Holograms is obviously something that's a big part of Eve, and it's something that we've had a look at. Just because they're not on the wreckage at the moment doesn't mean that they won't be. And there's also a lot of opportunities as well for other things in the environment to also use holography and artificial reality as well. AR overlays will become a bigger thing as well. So that's something that we are definitely looking into. Chromatic aberration is kind of like really sort of a byproduct of a lens. So it may be something that we play around with. We're trying to kind of like keep the agency of the player with eyes, not lens. So you're never a floating camera. There's this discordant kind of like floating camera. We're trying to always make it feel like you're seeing through the eyes of your player. You're not playing your character. You are your character. You are your Vanguard. So if chromatic aberration is in there, it will probably be because you are actually seeing through the eyes of a lens at that point.
Yeah, I'll probably add that also we've been introducing a bit more colors in the wreckages themselves already since from Carrion to Solstice, and it's gonna increase even more for future maps because we want to try to use color for ships with a sense of purpose, as in if I don't know, kind of like in a similar way that when you go to a public building, you have areas that have a different color sometimes for the purpose of the area. We want to do the same for the interiors of the ships, where you have, I don't know, the cargo area that's maybe has signage or whatnot, that is all in green style, just guessing now, right? Armor is red and so on. So we will introduce more color in general, for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know if you guys seen the ship that they made with the skin at all, the hot dog ship. I just pictured, having a wreckage of a hot dog ship just on the planet somewhere, But no, that's great.
I will include it in the next concept.
Yeah, yeah, please do. The next question then is probably for CCP Collins. But Possum asks, are there any plans to introduce fittings for drop suits?
Yes.
Yep, great. So that was
Very straightforward.
That's it. Yeah, that wasn't actually on theme, so I wasn't inclined to ask this question. But since it was Possum, I thought we'll give him something. That's fine. There you go, Possum. So the next question then. So this one again is from Garm. The newest announcement confirmed Arkhambine freed several Warclone infomorphs from the Saro detention facility. We've seen some characters tied to Saro's anti-Warclone Red Troop unit before, namely Oveg Drust and Edencom Commander Cassia Valkana. how much do they know about the Deathless, and how will they react to the newest developments? I don't know if Demiurge wants to take this one.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, so let's see, it's where it's saying the newest announcement confirmed Arkham freed several infomorphs from Sorrow's facility. That actually surfaced in a news article around the time of the first strike event, so that would have been a bit before things really kicked off in the first place with the Vanguard. Clearly, Sorrow and Concord and Edencom have an awareness of these things. But as it goes, let's see, they clearly know at least a small bit more than than players do about the Deathless. But more or less, as Edencom and Sorrow are very involved with defending against active threats to to the empires and to everyone else. The Vanguard might not be specifically the one that they're focusing on as much at the moment. As for the Deathless more broadly, there's again questions as to well, what exactly they plan to do or begin trying to work against. But well, as you know, how
Yeah.
much do they know about the Deathless, and how will they react to the newest developments? I think as things come, they'll be forced to contend with whatever rears its head, and it won't be nothing.
Great.
To say a nothing burger answer. Sorry about that.
No. That's great. That's great. Just trying to be careful. Obviously, it's quite difficult, isn't it? I guess on what you can say and what cannot say. Great. So we do have a couple of like more product questions. I don't know, CCP Collins. I mean, I can ask you if you're happy to answer them.
Yeah, go for it.
So
I'll answer anything.
yeah, sure. Will we see maps similar to Dust 514 with places for urban warfare, or are we stuck with the theme of Rex for now?
No, I think we always want to explore other ways, and Joker might want to also jump in here, and even Leo, right? Because these guys are exploring what our universes and our environments can look like. But we're not tying our hands behind our back in terms of how we build the environments. You saw a lot of different environments already in Solstice in terms of how we can push that out. Like you saw more verdant, lots of trees. It wasn't solely just about, scorched wreckage. And I know some of the ideas that they're already talking about in terms of how we take environments in the future are looking at other types of environments that we can have. I don't think we'll have. I want to stray away from saying we'll have maps like Dust 514 because they were designed for a very specific purpose. But in terms of the types of environments, and maybe more urban warfare is something that we might want to explore in the future. We're not saying no to those things just out of principle.
Yeah, we're looking at a lot of these different things in the background. There's a lot of concepts that we've got that explore all of these sorts of things. Obviously, we're a small team, so the roadmap comes in and really dictates what we're going to do with these sorts of things. But the reality is, we're looking at all of these things. The Vanguard are in crash sites at the moment, but where their future lies is way beyond that. New Eden is a very big place, and the Vanguard are going to play a part in that. So crash sites is only where they are for the beginning, right? Every bird leaves its nest, and eventually the Vanguard won't just be in crash sites.
I don't know if Wrinkles, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, like Joker was saying, we are exploring some very cool stuff at the moment. We are in the concepting phase for the coming things to come, and I think we have some very interesting ideas for some settings. I'm personally very happy with. Let's see how it evolves, though. Right, it's very early, of course.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so the next product question then is again from Possum. Are we going to see more? Okay, I will ask this one anyway, but I think it's going to be another yes. But are we going to see more drop suits and weapons, or is the focus on letting us build a variation based on the chipsets for now?
I can't one word answer that. That's too tricky to one word answer this.
Yeah.
The answer is more like yes, though. I think we've still got some things to focus on before, like to talk about drop suits customization is something that we want to expand into in the future anyway, in terms of how we can give players more strategic depth in terms of the decisions that they make and how they load themselves out and how that fits into kind of people's playstyles and such. That's always something we've always wanted to expand into. In terms of weapons, yeah, we're never we're not always going to be a one weapon game, right? We're not sat here going, right, we're going to make the perfect one weapon shooter. There are going to be plenty of weapons that people will be able to play eventually, but there's just still some depth in the weapons as a system that we want to add in before we start expanding on that and start responding to some feedback that we got with the adaptive weaponry, right, that we added in with the chipsets in Solstice. There's still some stuff we want to respond to there, still some depth that we want to build in, some stuff that we're cooking that I'm really excited about, that I'm hoping people will get to play in the next release. But yeah, we'll certainly be expanding into more weapons. We've actually got a lot concepted. I think we've probably teased some through various means when we've been showing off concept art in the past, but
We have.
I know, yeah, there you go. Yeah, Joker, I was going to throw that over. Joker and the team have already concepted out a lot of weapons that exist from a lot of the different manufacturers, right, Eve?
Great.
We still don't know which one we'll do next, though. We've got some ideas of what we'd like to do, but it's still a question mark in what would be Vanguard's second weapon, and it's interesting to ask people in here actually, like, what would they want as Vanguard's second weapon?
Don't give them that option. They're gonna say like Nova knives or something.
Okay, well then, if they're asking for Nova knives, then they might be quite happy to hear what we might be thinking about adding in the next release.
Oh yeah.
Nova knives is a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Who was our friend who's been an expert melee guy in each of the events? I can't remember the name.
Levi Thunder.
Levi Thunder.
Yeah, Levi Thunder.
Yeah, they were.
Someone, Vipek said egg launcher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's coming anyway. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
We're replacing the Core 80 with an egg launcher.
There was actually an egg launcher in Fortnite. It was great. They used to do it for like an Easter event. It was a lot of fun. Just a normal grenade launcher, but they just reskinned it with Easter eggs. Great.
Yeah. Someone said grenades in the chat as well. That's something we're currently exploring at the moment. I don't know if it will make it into the next release or not, but grenades are a fundamental part of the arsenal that we want people to have. Or throwables. We'll call them throwables at this point, because that's kind of the bracket of them that we're exploring at the moment. So that might be something that you might see in the game in the future as well.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so the next one then, I think this is in relation to lore. But what will happen with the infomorphs that refuse to convert to Vanguard infomorph format and join Deathless? They are de facto being held against their will in Fulcrum VR at the moment. Demiurge.
Yeah, so I'd say that, let's see, this might see things slightly differently than they're intended to be presented, where the idea is that war clones have had a choice available to them in going to Zarzak and entering into the Fulcrum's virtuality in the first place. Those who come there but don't convert would be essentially residing inside, well, more or less willingly, as the idea is that given the economic pressures and different levels of persecution by the law faced by prior gen independent mercenaries, the things that, well, these are the factors that sort of push them more underground in the first place, or, slightly less present broadly across the entire scene of New Eden. Here in the Fulcrum, those who are willing to join, or let's see, less join than cooperate with this burgeoning pirate faction, are able to essentially be guaranteed conscious activity and community with others. But also, those who come here wouldn't be having this conversion thing, sprung on them suddenly after they've already entered this place. I think it's in my perspective that there'd be some notion of what they're being invited to ahead of time, and the option to accept this call. So I wouldn't say people are being forced into the virtuality or into converting. Then you can go even beyond that into the question of, you know, it's certainly not at all uncommon or impossible in any way for workloads to have backups of, their imprint and have things stored elsewhere. And of course, in New Eden, the question of having more than one of yourself active is quite a taboo. But there is basically the information they would have access to even within that virtuality. I don't see there being much of a reason why they wouldn't be able to get out
Mhm.
before becoming Vanguard. After that, probably a little more tied in for now. And again, for now. But
Okay.
I wouldn't say that there's people de facto being held against their will in the VR. Uh, Frankly, though, it's difficult to frame things in a way that doesn't at least give that impression. So I can certainly understand where that comes from.
Yeah.
But our intention is for that to change in different ways in the future.
Cool. Good answer. Yeah, and that question came from Eleanor. So, very well respected in the community. I hope they appreciate that answer. Okay, so next one then. So we'll go to Macintosh's question. I think this will actually relate to pretty much all of you, I believe. So in the previous Q&A session, you mentioned something about experimenting with social spaces within EVE Vanguard. Since the VR chat project, which is pretty cool, by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen it, has so far revealed interest in social spaces related to New Eden. What kind of social areas do you have in mind? Would it be something like the interior of the Fulcrum or of Jita 4.4, or otherwise an extension of the virtuality of the Fulcrum VR where infomorphs can mingle without constantly staring at a menu all day? Who wants to take this?
Question. Very good question.
Mm.
Virtuality is where the Vanguard are residing at the moment, so that would seem the logical place for us to start. But also, the virtuality has a lot of very interesting and unique kind of properties to it. One of which being that it's not limited by 4 dimensions of space and time, right? So it's an incredibly interesting like playground for us. And it also ties very much into players being able to be and express themselves however they want in those sorts of environments. So, yeah, rest assured, we are looking at these, and there's a lot of brainstorming going on about what they will become.
Yeah, and I'll just, add to that a bit that, yeah, if there's any place for social space to first exist, it definitely makes sense for it to be within this virtual space that is well, hosted within the Fulcrum.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think,
oh, God, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think from a gameplay perspective, I think we do want social spaces. I think narratively that can exist. I think as others have discussed in various places. I don't think we're certainly not going to start with something that's like VR chat, right, where you're walking around a physical space and talking to one another's. That would be quite some scope for us to take on initially. We do want to have social features. We do want to have ways that people can interact with one another. It likely won't start physical, but if it makes sense for the project and it's worthwhile us spending the time on it, then we could look at other ways on how people interact. But I think I could quite clearly say right now we're not planning on having any kind of social spaces where people will be walking around and interacting with each other in 3D space. And whilst we say kind of just staring at menus all day, there's been some really cool direction that Joker and some of the team have done in terms of how we want to contextualize what you're looking at, and have that feel that it's a bit of what's the term I'm looking for? Kind of diegetic, in the sense that you're not looking at game menus that we've created. You're looking at systems that actually exist within technical and operating systems and digital systems and screens that exist in the world. As a Vanguard, when you're choosing where to deploy, this is a system that somebody would be using, and that information that you're getting
Mystery,
exists in
darling.
that.
Keep the mystery.
Oh.
I'd say, just to quickly add a bit to his thing there, it's you can essentially interpret what the players see. So basically, everything you see in the game is meant to be, again, diegetic. It's the experience of you as a Vanguard war clone. And you can sort of think of the UI that you're currently seeing as almost an interface that's been bolted on to underlying Jovian systems of the Fulcrum. So it's an interface that's been sort of placed on top of what's already there by the Deathless Circle, or people within it, to sort of create an interface.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have actually seen the VR chat world that Macintosh has created, but it actually looks really incredible. There is a thread on the Discord if anyone wants to check it out. I did actually jump on it yesterday, and he's done so much work to it. Yeah, it looks really cool. Like each faction has its own quarters and stuff, and there's like a disco room and another room that I won't spoil, but yeah, it's really cool. Okay, perfect. So the next question then, so this is again art related. It comes from Eleanor. Do you have a concept art for more planet types? We have temperate, ocean, barren kind of concept art already. What about ice, lava, plasma, gas, and storm? Oh, and moons. Are they gonna happen or happening? Will you share?
I can start on this one.
Mhm.
So whenever we make a new map, first we explore all the possibilities. for each new map, before we even start to work on the specific map, we make a lot of exploration concepts. That's and we're talking about dozens and dozens of them, to trying to figure out different themes. So the short answer is yes, we have concepts for a lot of different type of biomes. Now, what we will do or what not, it depends on a lot of different things. But the idea is to definitely expand with future maps.
Well said. Yeah, we've been looking at we're looking at all sorts. We've got concepts for ice planets. We've got concept for ice planets with atmospheres, without atmospheres. I guess they could be kind of like micro moons or asteroids. The discussions that we have kind of like on a regular basis when we're brainstorming these sorts of things, me and Leo and Ben, is kind of what if you're even fighting on kind of like asteroids in a planetary belt system, so it's rotating around, so you're getting day and night cycles that are running in very, very short order. Obviously these things come with a lot of technical kind of constraints, but it also allows us, when we're brainstorming these sorts of things, to start talking and thinking about with the tech team about how do we kind of how do we earmark future tech that we're interested in by ideating these sorts of things. So it all starts with very loose concepts, and then we start taking those through and see what strikes a chord with the team.
Great. If there was nothing else to add on that, should I move on? That was a good answer.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so this next question, then this is in relation to I guess, yeah, lore and a bit of project as well. So this one again is from Eleanor, and it says, why do empires pretend like there is no Vanguard problem? Why didn't they siege? Is it Zarzak yet? Is ZZ is Zarzak,
Yeah,
I assume.
Zarzak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Vanguard, so the empires, let's see, if we're talking about a Vanguard problem, as I mentioned a bit ago, the Vanguard specifically have only acted on a couple of specific occasions. First one being, again, the first strike event, and The most recent, of course, being, well, what happened with Solstice, where they're not showing up in mass all over the place as some blanket new opposition, but they are in this, this essential prototype phase. The Empire's probably, well, between the insurgencies and other things, uh, have bigger fish to fry with the Deathless than the Vanguard specifically. And as for why haven't they, sieged Zarzak yet, that comes down to, well, some things developmentally and narratively. But if you want to have an answer that, some of my perspective at least, the nature of entering and navigating Zarzak, not to mention the Deathless being in control of this old Jove outpost, the Fulcrum. You might say that it makes for an extremely well fortified position. Whereas previously this organization was very, very secret and not allowing really any awareness of things they were doing to sneak out unless they could really not avoid it otherwise. As they started growing the organization, it became more known. But being in Zarzak, it's sort of their fortified position almost. And if you're thinking about the gravity hazard and how you have these safe zones, which are sort of the only protection from, again, these local space-time conditions, it seems like a place that might be very difficult to physically invade. Again, though, that's just some narrative spieling on sort of how that might go or why that might be. There's always other reasons.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's a really good answer. Like that. Okay, so the next question then. So this one comes from Sodank. It says, "Hi, I'm someone that considers themselves a dedicated merchant/industrialist for Zarzak in EVE. I'm curious to know, with the game's background centralizing on the Fulcrum so much, if there will be any crossover economics across both titles. And when I asked that, I didn't rightly know what that could mean myself. There is the wider vision Dust had with EVE players possibly producing the weapons and being the ones that sell them. If not economic, any general cross-game interactions for Zarzak at all on the table?" It's a pretty big question.
Who would be the one to answer something here?
I guess yourself, would it? Would you be able to talk on that one?
Well, narratively, there's one thing, but then there's any amount of crossover between the teams is another. I'm not sure what we're allowed to actually say.
Okay, sure. Well, we can skip that one for now if we want.
I will say, I guess that these games are, this is a successor to Dust 514. So clearly there is intent to have meaningful connection. And I can't say more than that, but
Sure.
look forward to things.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can cross that. We can cross that question again.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on then.
And go kind of high level as well. Like we do want there to be maybe a bridge is a strong word, but we want there to be economic impact across the two games. I think we're not, well, between EVE Online and Vanguard, I should say. They won't be directly connected. I think that was some of the mistake that Dust made. Like the amount of ISK you had to pay for just a gun in Dust was comparable to that of a capital ship, and the economies just were hard to tie together. But we do want an economic connection between the two games. We're in conversations about what that could look like and how we can start to have that impact. But EVE is a very economically driven game. Vanguard is a part of that. It needs to also have that economic impact, and that has to be meaningful across both games. So we're still in the midst of figuring some of that out at the moment, but it is an ambition for us that there is an economic bridge and impact across the two games. It just would be a bit silly for us to leave that on the table, considering how much of EVE is driven by its economy.
And considering Vanguard's inherited legacy, I suppose, as well. And just to add a quick tiny bit to that, of course, with the Vanguard initially, and for now, being sort of a product of the Deathless, of course, whatever early interactions you might actually see between the games on the economic side, you would imagine involve the Deathless in some regard.
Great. Yeah, great answer. Okay, so the next one then, this is a little bit more art orientated. So this one comes from Eleanor again. It says, the 73 painted in red on Solstice Rex and on Clone Tube's sphere, on the ceiling in the core on Carrion means, or what does it mean? The desire to know more drives me nuts. So I'd love if you just say it's a random number that was just there just to cause havoc. But...
I mean, there's always a meaning to these sorts of things, even if it is just to the artist who actually is authoring the asset and putting it into the game. Sometimes the challenge is to actually spot what they are putting in there, and because not everything is necessarily appropriate that gets sometimes checked into a level. But it could be someone's birthday. It could be any one of a number of different things. Is there a specific meaning to the 73 now? Ooh,
It's obviously the 73rd Clone Tube sphere.
could be.
I mean, it has a meaning now. It's driving people nuts. So we're gonna have to keep that continuity up, I think.
Is
Well,
this the new 514?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do we really want to get into the 514? Maybe
Amazing.
73 will be our 514.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
Oh, I hope not.
maybe whoever writes the most compelling fan fiction about where the 73 comes from gets enshrined in canon.
I like that idea. That's cool. Amazing. So, the next question then, let's have a look. Yes, we got something in relation to art again. So have you ever considered making maps that take place in the ruins of failed colonies that were built after the wormhole collapse? Wrinkles
I'm not
or...
quite sure what it means by wormhole collapse here, but again, this is more an art thing anyhow. I guess I'm not quite sure what they mean when they say that though. Like wormhole
Yeah, I
collapse, you can
kind of
talk
think
about.
it's more narrative than art, actually, this question, right?
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think it's certainly a little bit of a confluence of those. But if you're talking like wormhole collapse, as in end of the second Jove Empire, and the sleepers going to wormhole space and all, that's one question. But also if you're talking about like Thera, which was ruined, it's colonized by the Sisters of Eve and ruined when Caroline Star happened. Well, there's lots of places in New Eden that have had interesting, terrible events happen, right?
Okay. Cool.
It would be cool, though.
I'm not on the
Yeah.
art side, so all I can speak to is the fact that yes, there are very much these types of locations in the world, and well, there's some interest in thinking about what's there.
Cool. Did you guys want to mention anything else in regards to the art side, or shall I just move on?
Again, it's kind of. I mean, I'll just add a little bit to what Emilio said. We're obviously looking at all of these sorts of things again. Fulfilling kind of player fantasy is obviously a big one for us, right? And revealing areas that have only ever been hinted at. I mean, players have been looking at the planet surfaces for a long time now and wondering what actually looks on what it looks like to be down there. I mean, Dust answered some of that, but it's a much wider universe than just the planets that were visited there. So again, the possibility of visiting ancient ruins is obviously something that excites us. So I definitely think it is somewhere that we will visit in the future. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great. Okay, so the next question we have, so this comes from Matt, but this is like a 3-part question. So I'll just ask the first one for now, and then maybe we can roll on to the next 2. But it says, will the virtuality aboard the Fulcrum in Zarzak be the game's mainstay environment for players when socializing and outside of combat? I think we have already touched on this as well. I don't know if there was anything else you guys wanted to comment in relation to this.
No, I think we already mostly covered that. The answer is more or less yes in that regard.
Indeed.
Great. So the second part of the question then, so can this space be a means of combat training, weapon and suit loading testing, squad tactic drills, past combat replay breakdowns, and other FPS necessities? Is it possible this space can be a place where more mysteries of the Fulcrum can come to light through player discoveries?
We've talked about how we, even from a gameplay perspective, even before we even think about it narratively, but I think it does make it sense within the virtual existence of the Zarzak, is combat training and field testing is something that we want to probably get into the game sometime in the future. When you are customizing your weapon and you want to test it out, you don't have to feel like you have to fully deploy to the surface of the planet before you can do that. So we've been thinking about ways that we might be able to in the future allow people to field test, and that will be part of some maybe virtual environment that exists within Zarzak. But that is something that we're thinking about from a gameplay perspective. But it feels like we can make it fit narratively quite well.
Yeah, just to support that slightly as well. Narratively, of course, that sort of thing is pretty well supported. The Jove and, more specifically the Sleepers being, well, very masterful when it comes to virtual realities, virtualities and all that. Even if the Fulcrum is not something quite on the level of temporal sophistication that the Sleepers had, so far as physical fidelity goes, I think it's safe to presume that it could manage that kind of thing, and being able to test that thing there would make sense.
Yeah. The third part again then is so if the virtuality on the Fulcrum becomes a space players can experience, will it have Jovian aesthetics, being a Jovian virtuality on board a Jovian megastructure?
Well, there's certainly there's certainly a reason for it. Yeah, that all comes down to if we ever begin to explore that more, how we'd want to explore it. Because again, you have an interface that's bolted on top of the underlying Jovian systems, and that's the primary menus. So whatever is beneath that, well, being able to dig more into that would be neat.
Cool. So the next question then, so this is probably for all of us, but it's some really great ideas. So given Vanguard's ability to exist in the virtuality, are there any plans to have fights take place within it, freeing up the design team to come up with whatever aesthetic they like? Is this a way to bring back Dust 16v16 matches and the old maps?
So I think I'll talk from a gameplay perspective. I think on 16v16 and that, like we talked about this before, we kind of want to have our cake and eat it when it comes to Vanguard. We don't want there to just be a single way of experiencing this shooter. Why can't we create different forms that people play against each other? We've got a mode right now that's PvPvE. What does something that's maybe a bit more PvE leaning look like? What does something that's a bit more structured PvP look like? And we're always thinking about ways that we can kind of create different modes of play within Vanguard, but it all exists within the same ecosystem. It's all working towards the same goals. So we can't say right now what form that will take, whether it will be a 16v16 shooter or something, but we are wanting to experiment with more structured means of PvP and how that might look. But it has to complement the game that we're making. And so we want to take care with that when we're developing anything. But it is something that we're thinking about because, like I said, we're greedy. We want to make the best MMO FPS that anyone's ever made, and to do that, there needs to be lots of different type of shooting experiences to account for things that people want to play, either solely or on a whim.
And when it comes to maps, of course, overall, you're talking about other maps, old maps, new maps, things like that. Resources have to be committed in the right places for us to bring you, well, a really good experience. So some things come before others.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because I think a lot of people, there's definitely a lot of community that do prefer the sort of like PvE aspect. So it's good to know that there's areas that we are exploring. Great. So the next one then, so this comes from the same person. This is from Juno Tristan. I want the scenery to look pretty, but not cost too much in performance. Interactive elements may work well in single-player games, but can cause issues if they're a source of information, but will display differently depending on what graphic quality you're running. What is your plan to mitigate this?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in a little bit because that was, I think, highlighting a problem a lot of games have had before. I think PUBG famously, you could just the grass would just turn off and the bushes would just turn off at lower quality settings. So anyone trying to hide in them, you just see them lying on the grass. But yeah, we always want to optimize, right? We always want to increase the range of hardware that our game can run on. That's, I think anyone's goal, really. But we also do want to stick true to the visual language that we're establishing in our spaces and the type of environments that we want to build. I don't think we're going to suddenly turn around and say that we want our game to run on, to put it bluntly, potatoes, because I don't think we'd be able to do the game that we want to make justice on that. But we are always looking to optimize. But we know very clearly where those lines are, that sometimes you optimize too far and the lower optimization starts to have gameplay advantages. We don't want that. So that's something that's very mindful in how far we go when we optimize, but it's still a strategy of ours to increase the range of hardware that people can play this game on. We don't want it to be locked behind sometimes quite expensive graphics cards if we can avoid that. But like I said, we want to make sure we don't go beyond the game that we really want to make and how we want it to look and feel.
Yeah, great. Good answer. Okay, so I'm just being a little conscious of time here, so maybe we'll just ask one or two more questions. I don't know if there's anything in particular that you guys want to pick out, but I can ask this one. So this comes from Juno Tristan again, and it's Dust's lore was pretty static after it was released until shutdown. Will the Vanguard story be much more ongoing after the 1.0 release? For example, empires getting involved, changing base locations and areas of operation.
Well, certainly other factions having some involvement, again, as we were addressing earlier, is something we want to do. And of course, that would most definitely come with, well, ongoing developments to the story. So short answer, yes, depending on where we take things. After all, we don't want it to be solely tied to the Deathless, even if the technology, again, starts here.
Great. Anyone else want to add to that, or good? So we do have a final question in here. I guess this one's in relation to art, so it might be a good one to end on. But it comes in from Big T, and it says one of the big selling points felt was the unique weapon / war clone designs that each of the 4 main factions has. With the Vanguard being primarily based on the Deathless, will there be any opportunity to see more unique designs of the aforementioned areas, even if it's not segmented as the 4 factions? I like this.
Good question. Again, the answer is going to be yes. Of course, we'll be looking into the Empire kind of like influences on the Vanguard and within their own kind of empires as well. Again, it's the first ground that we're exploring is the identity of the Vanguard themselves. Who are they? How do they manifest? But what they become over time will be where we start to explore those sorts of areas. But the manufacturers and it's more about the kind of like the cultures themselves and how they represent in the game in the future. That's something that we're incredibly interested in. With there being such rich pickings with the manufacturers, there's very rich pickings there with them having their own established identities anyway. So that's something that we're going to be diving into and already are looking at, because ultimately, empires don't create things, manufacturers do, and that's extremely rich picking ground for us.
We'll just whenever we design, do the visual design for something new, like a weapon or a part of a wreckage or a device or something, the first question that we ask ourselves always is, who is the manufacturer? And we take that as a starting point to design how it looks like. So yeah, hopefully in future we manage to include more variety of factions for sure.
Yeah, everything's the product of a culture, right?
Yeah, that's great. And I think we saw that with the 8 skins that we actually released to the community for them to vote on. You could see that they were relating to different factions, and people had a real kick out of voting on those. So yeah, very cool.
Do you think we have time for any more? There's one or two that.
Yeah, if there's which one? Yeah, if you wanna, which one is it?
Well, I mean, if we have to have one final one, if we don't have time for one beyond that, there's that one from Eberard.
Yeah. So, given the long history, that one. Yeah. So, given the long history and lore of EVE, how do you keep track of it all? How do you keep things aligned between EVE Online, Vanguard, and any other EVE universe projects? When it comes to gameplay versus fun versus history versus the future plan, how do you choose what needs to give, change, or just be removed?
I really did like this question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the first part, I guess, given the long history, how to keep track of it all? There are, several of us, myself included, who have been involved with and keeping up with and digging into details of how things work in this world and what its history is. Again, myself, probably a little more obsessively than most in the past. Been involved prior to Vanguard or even prior to working at CCP. So on a personal level, keeping track of it all comes down to having really just built understanding of this stuff over more than a decade for me. And then you also have, again, CCP Ritati and other people who have been really invested in this for a very, very long time. So that helps a lot. Again, how do you keep things aligned between EVE Online, EVE Vanguard, other EVE Universe projects? Essentially, just the core of it is keeping continuity in mind. Just as player history is the sort of the foundation of what's made the EVE universe so lasting. That also goes for things for the story. It's one big single shard thing. And I mean, I have multiple EVE history books on my shelf for the players. The lore is sort of a similar thing where it's got to stay in line. And so continuity is a priority. And the narrative designers across different teams are regularly in contact. So it's not as if we're working in isolation. Things are very much discussed inter-team, I guess. What's a good term for that? Yeah, but we keep each other in line. We keep things united. You can sort of think of even Vanguard as a double helix. So it stays the way it should because we keep it that way purposefully. And the last bit about gameplay versus fun versus history versus future plans. Gameplay design requirements, of course, are the canvas on which everything else gets painted. So whatever the game requires is what gets built. But what actually gets built there, that can come from history of things or future elements that we're trying to go for. But I'd say the way I like to describe it the most is that we have more than 20 years of materials, and using that effectively as a palette to paint upon this canvas of, all right, this is the gameplay design, this is the design stuff that we're requiring. There's a lot to use, and there's a lot of colors to mix. And as for future plans, history versus future plans, I wouldn't really say there's that much of a break between the two of those, because it really is one line of finding the strings that have a destination that lies somewhere in the future and tracing that and figuring out, well, where do these things bridge and where are they useful for us? And of course, immersion and enjoyment is an imperative across all of that. So
yeah, no, I
bit
like that.
Bit of a long one there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the idea of it being, like a palette, and you're using it to paint a canvas. Using the the previous lore and the previous stories and everything that's been created. No, it's really interesting. Okay, great. I think CCP Collins had to run off to another meeting, but he did say goodbye in the chat. But aside from that, I just want to thank you all for attending the first Thirsty Theme Thursday. I think it's been great. I think the community has a lot to go on. But yeah, it was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this.
No problem at all. I will catch you guys
Have
in
a
the
great
next one.
day, everybody.
Sorry?
Bye-bye.
Oh, bye.
As I
Bye.
say, have a great day. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Catch you
Nice
guys.
talking to all of you.
See you soon. Bye.
See you guys.
See you soon.